everyone.
We are here for episode 3 of What We Read. And
for season 3,
yeah,
that's right.
3, season...
We didn't change outfits, but who cares?
It's fine. You guys are used to us by now.
I do want to start real quick because like I said, it was a very, very slow reading, I want to say month and a half for me, especially since Bookish New Year, blah, blah, blah. After getting a copy of this book at BA through Mel, so thanks Mel for giving us the tour tote. You know, when we hauled this for the BA kind of haul, the author actually kind of just like commented and say, hey, love the thing for the book, and I just like, huh, and then I googled it, it was like, it's the author, oh my goodness, and I totally mispronounced her name. She was kind enough to correct it. And so this is Stormrise by Gillian Boehm, which is lovely. First of all, it's blurred by Tamara Pierce. I devoured it in one sitting. I understand that now, I totally do, and that's exactly what I must have missed her. So Gillian, if you're reading this or watching this thing, here it is. As promised, I told you it's going to come up in What We Read. The blurb at the back is, you know, Alana, Eowyn, and Arya now meet Rain. And you know what? She's awesome. 3 things you have to know about Rain. She'd rather die a toothless hag in the gutter than marry a boy she's never met. She can fight as well as any man, also very true. And the war is her chance to prove it. It's just she didn't count on the dragons. And I have to say, the lore on the dragon side is pretty spot on. So the lore is fun. It's good. It's great. It's pretty solid. And underneath all of that, it's very YA in that there's a young girl who's just wanting to find her place in the world. There's a giant... It actually has a lot of Mulan vibes. Who doesn't love a Mulan vibe, right? Especially because at the time... you know, Rain's father happens to be one of the greatest sort of master at arms type dudes. He's been teaching her how to whatever the martial art is for their world, and she's been very, very good. She's a twin. Her brother, unfortunately, and her were sick at a young age, like as babies actually, and by some crazy mishap, her brother did not really weather that disease too well and sort of ended up being a little bit more simple. So that makes him sort of a person with disability. So when the conscript comes to their house, it's either their aging old dad or her youngest brother or her brother, which is not cool. And so she goes for broke, pretends to be the brother.
Of course she does. And
does the whole Mulan thing. I was half expecting some, like, and when he said dragons, I'm like, is the dragon going to wish dishonor on your cow and your family? But no, that's actually not what happened. The dragon here is ancient and crazy and awesome, and when it does make contact with Rain, boy oh boy, amazing stuff. So it's a standalone, which I love, because that means it doesn't end at a cliffhanger. It's not gonna, you know...
That's great.
Yeah, so it's like, great. It's a complete story. I'm so inspired, and that's pretty much what we want to do. So this is going over to Alexa, so if you get to read it. So Jillian, you made an amazing job with this thing. I totally get why Tamara Pierce could not put it down. She would have loved it, and you know, she apparently did, had I not known that she had already read it. So recommend Stormrise to anybody that wants a nice, strong female character with a pretty good ending. Alrighty, in which case, turning it over to you and your pile, because we're going to end with a book that will surprise no one at all. Starting with...
I read The Tea Dragon Festival, which is by Katie O'Neill. This is...
Book 2, I want to say?
No, it's actually a prequel to the Tea Dragon Society. And I did not know that until I actually went in. And I actually think I may have enjoyed this one just a little bit more.
That's gorgeous.
It's very cute. It's about a completely different character. Her name is Rin, and she's kind of... She grew up in a village where the tea dragons were like a normal part of their everyday. So they're not necessarily like beholden to anyone in the village. They just live there, kind of mooch off things.
That's gorgeous. I want...
and then one day when she's hunting for ingredients, she actually discovers that there is a young dragon who has been asleep in the forest for like years and years and years. And he was supposed to be like protecting the village, but somehow he fell asleep, and it's got this magical... it's got this magical like...
okay, cool. So like, that's not great at his job then.
It's half them trying to figure out what put him to sleep, but the other half is him like sort of becoming a part of the village with everyone else, and it is so wonderful and adorable. First of all, the illustration style is amazing,
bloody gorgeous, actually.
And what I love the most about this is that, you know, in the story there's so much diversity, and it's just nice because it is a story about just finding the place where you belong and how you fit in, and it's wonderful. I cannot wait to get a finished copy of this. Would highly recommend both this and the Tea Dragon Society. Speaking of like diverse stories, Mooncakes is another one. It's by Wendy Zhu and Suzanne Walker. I got this one at Book Expo, and I was already excited about it, and then I read it and I was like, this is like the most wonderful thing ever. Okay, it is about a witch and a werewolf. They used to be friends as kids, but then the werewolf moved away. The witch is named Nora, and then the werewolf is named Tam. And so one night, Tam actually comes back to the village, like where she used to live and where Nora still lives, and their paths cross, and it turns out that Tam is trying very hard to contain this like evil dark force that is trying to take over the world. basically, or you'll find out eventually what it actually is. She ends up, you know, rekindling her friendship with Nora, maybe turning it into something more. She also ends up sort of living with Nora and her grandmothers. And it's just like this wonderful story of like both like girls basically finding a way to save the day from these evil forces, but also just finding this relationship that gives them both the strength they need to do certain things. And it's just wonderful and lovely. Again, illustration style is very, 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 very adorable. It's very readable. It seems like it's extremely long. It's not. It just flies by because you just want to know what happens to both Tam and Nora, and I think anyone who reads this is going to find it delightful. Quite enjoyed it. Would highly recommend. I also listened to 2 audiobooks. I reread Everless, which is by Sarah Holland, via audio because I wanted to sort of get myself back in that world and that story. So it centers around a main character named Jules Ember, and she lives in a world where it's sort of like the world in that Justin Timberlake movie with the time thing. You can basically...
Looper? No.
In Time? About Time? Something like
that?
Yeah. In Time, I think.
No, not Looper. Yeah, the thing where you can sort of like sell like years of your life
that
to
is
somebody.
essentially what that world is also. You can turn your blood into blood irons, and that's money in the world. That's currency. So Jules' father is very sick, and so in an attempt to make enough money for them to like survive for the next couple of years or so, she returns to this huge estate called Everless. She lived there with her dad as a kid when her dad was their blacksmith, but then an incident forced them to flee and like sort of change their identity. And so she's back because that's the only way to quickly earn some money. It just so happens that while she's there, the Queen of Sempera, which is the name of their entire kingdom, is coming to visit because her daughter is betrothed to the son of one of the sons of that family who owns the estate. And her dad has never wanted her to encounter this queen for reasons he's never told her. So that obviously is not going to go well. And so Jules finds herself embroiled in this mystery where she's discovering the real reason that she had to leave Everless and the reality of her circumstances and why they don't want her to meet the queen. And I'll leave it at that. It's good. I think it's really fun. It does have a few tropes that are very common in YA fantasy for sure, but I think like it's enjoyable for what it is. If you're looking for the kind of story where there's an actual romance, that one has none. I'm going to tell you now.
Fair enough.
There's none that you can take seriously, if that's a fair way to say. But what I really enjoy about it is the lore and how things unfold in it. And then when you get to the ending, you're kind of like, oh my god, that's such a great like reveal. That's such a great drop. So right after that, I immediately jumped into the sequel and I listened to that for the first time on audio. It's called Evermore. The beginning of that one is a little rocky for me. You're kind of thrown right into the action, which is not a bad thing, especially if you're reading them back to back, but it also feels unsettling because like the way the action happens is like weird because it's like stops and starts. But at a certain point, it finally hits its stride and you sort of see like how this entire story is going to unfold. You get more about this world and the lore and the real truth behind the magic and the blood irons and all of that. It kind of becomes something I didn't expect. So in the end, I did enjoy it, even though the beginning was a bit clunky. And I will say the ending was also kind of, it felt a little rushed. Like there was a little less time focused on the actual final big like encounter than I would have liked. But overall, I thought it was very solid. It's a fun YA fantasy. It's a quick read, so if you're looking for something new to try out, I would highly recommend it. Also for June, I read the first story in this compilation. This is the Modern Fairy Tales, which is a compilation of Holly Black's series. So I read Tithe with my friends Jane from It's Jane Lindsay, Mel from Mel to the Annie, and Kristen from Super Space Chick. I liked it, but I'm also like, it's also of its time. I think it was like late 1990s, maybe early 2000s, and like you can tell. First of all, the fashion alone is very 2000s. But not only that, like the way the story itself is written is a far cry from how Holly writes her current fairy series. It's very different. And I get it because it sort of fits in with the whole like, this is our normal world, but overlaid in that world there's also this magical world of fairy. They live in plain sight, you just don't know. So, like, that part of it was fascinating. And I think the highlights of the story for me are whenever they entered fairy. Because the way Holly Black writes fairy is still just as raw and brutal and, like, twisty as it is now. Maybe a little bit oversimplified compared to what it is now, but still more enjoyable than the whole, like, drama of the main character's actual real life, which I was not very fond of. There are a lot of not so great references in this one. I'm pretty sure Mel is going to probably point most of those out, so if her review is up, I will link to that. Yeah, it was fun, I guess, for what it was. Did I love it as much as I thought I would? Not necessarily. Am I going to continue the series? I'm definitely continuing the series because we're reading basically one a month. I am curious to see if something changes for the main character, because I'm not sure where it's gonna go really after the events of the first book, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. I also did a reread of Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater. I did this with DJ from Life in Fiction. Shiver is probably one of the only werewolf books that I have read and truly, truly loved, and a lot of that has to do with the way that Maggie's writing is very atmospheric. Like, she is very good at dragging you into her setting in a way where it won't let go of you.
Yeah, I've always wanted to read Shiver, actually.
Shiver is the story of Grace, who is a girl that when she was younger, she got dragged by wolves into the woods and attacked. She survived the attack and it was fine. It's been years since then, but she's still fascinated by the wolves in the woods. And so she eventually discovers that there's actually a secret. Not all of the wolves are actual wolves. Most of them are werewolves. Those two worlds collide when she meets Sam. A lot of things happen in this one that I did not remember. Shiver is beautifully written. Like I said, very atmospheric. Like, you feel so wintry when you're reading it. You feel their circumstances in it, and it's wonderful. I actually hadn't realized I had mildly annotated my copy of it because I had like underlined certain things, and I had really enjoyed certain turns of phrase, and I will always have like this nostalgic love for this book. Like, I genuinely like just, it brings me back to when I first read it. It's beautiful. It's written so well, and I truly enjoyed it, and I actually really want to read the next two because my favorite character in this series, aside from Sam, has not yet shown up properly. He's going to show up properly in the next two. Speaking of series, I completed this duology. This is the series that Kelly from Bella the Literati picked for me for May. So it's Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares, both by Laini Taylor. I don't even know how to explain the series, okay? It's very difficult to explain the concept of the series because going into it, I actually prefer that you probably not know too much about it. Let's just say it's about gods and monsters and the fine line between what it means to be one or the other.
Wow.
It also has like an aspect where knowledge and how different kinds of knowledge play different parts in the identification of something or the recognition of something. I have to say, I knew going in that Strange the Dreamer started a bit slow. A lot of people had warned me about that. And it did kind of take me a while to get into. I think I was like maybe halfway through before I started getting really, really interested in it. But I think like that slow burn is so worth it because you really get to know the characters in it very well. Like, I quite enjoyed getting to know them all. And then the second book, Muse of Nightmares, is more action-packed. There's a lot more going on, and you kind of don't know where she's going to take it, because how are you going to resolve something that seems almost impossible, considering all of the pain and all of the betrayal that occurred? And so it's a really well-done duology. I quite enjoyed it. I do not think it eclipses her other series as my favorite, but I will say it was definitely well worth the read, and I'm glad I finally got to it. Very, very good. Highly recommend. Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco, which is the third book in her Stalking Jack the Ripper series. Like the other two, it has a murder mystery, only this time it's sort of a closed murder mystery because they're on a boat. Audrey Rose and Thomas are traveling from London to New York, and it's like a week-long journey on this boat. And while they're on this boat, the thing that this voyage boasts is that there is a moonlight carnival. So every night, this troupe of performers will put on a different, like, death-defying performance. Trapeze, Harry Houdini is in it, he's one of the performers, knife throwing, like, it's all these different things. Except that every single night someone seems to die. And so Audrey Rose and Thomas spend most of the journey obviously trying to uncover who the murderer is before anyone else gets hurt. Here's the thing. I really like the idea of a closed mystery because it makes it more interesting for me, because like, how do you plot something with such limited space and limited time and limited people? Because obviously, you're not going to change out your cast because you're on the ship for these 7 days, right? The second thing that I loved about this is I'm a sucker for carnivals, so for me, I was just like, this part is so fascinating and so interesting. Like, they all fit on this ship together and they're doing all these things that could be magic, but also might not be magic. It could just be science. The thing that made this one actually hard to read is because I was so frustrated with Audrey Rose in it. I get that she was a teenager, and I get that she was unsure about what her future was going to be, especially as someone who is not your typical girl. Because she's not, she does know how to act like a lady, but she's also interested in forensics. And, you know, she's not sure, like, if she wants to, I don't know, pursue this relationship where she might end up married to someone, coughs Thomas. And
Clear
so,
which the
because of her
actually...
uncertainty, she ends up trying to explore, like, alternatives while she's reading this book. And I have to tell you, like, it was so frustrating to read because I, like, just the way she went about it was not my favorite. I was like, really, really, girl, really, you're gonna do it like that? I feel like I was texting Kristen the entire time, like, every so often I'd be like, I want to punch this person in the face. That was really the thing that brought this one down a couple of notches for me, because it was just really hard to read that, because it just didn't seem very, like, to an extent it was in character, but there was a point where it went past that, and I was just like, great, we're here. So yeah, I did still like it, just not as much as I liked the first or the second one, so there's that. But I am looking forward to reading the last one, so I'm glad I finally read it at least.
So that was the last book she was going to talk about, but this is the last book we're both going to talk about. Because also at BA, by some wonderful circumstance, but that circumstance being Kristen. So thank you, Kristen, for handing us her copy of, her arc of Ghosts of the Shadow Market. Go figure, we devoured this book in, like, record time. Where to even begin?
I mean,
we're not... like, the one thing that I do know is this, that we concluded, like, we've been pretty vocal about being Shadowhunter trash. At this point, we are complete garbage. There is a level apparently higher than trash, and where trash would stay at a dumpster. This is an entire island of, like, they're garbage islands. That's... and by no fault of our own, I'd like to think. Like, we didn't go out and find and want to be huge fans of this, not even the series, but these characters. Half the time when we talk about these things, and that is half the time we talk, it's not so much, oh, that one plot point, or hey, this piece of lore, and oh my god, the way the story pin... No, it's the characters. Like, they're real people to us, which... is insane. And so
before we talk more
about that,
Ghost of the Shadow Market is essentially a set of short stories, much like the Bane Chronicles or Shadowhunter Academy, and the thing that ties them together is a character, and that character is Brother Zachariah / Jem Carstairs. Unlike Shadowhunter Academy, which really, each story is different, but they're tied together by Simon being at the academy with his friends and his experiences there and how they parallel those stories. This one is sort of more like the Bane Chronicles, where it's like snippets of different points in Jem's life, where he encounters certain maybe familiar faces, or he experiences something that is going to be significant to a future plot.
And yes, there is a thread in there about how there is sort of like a mission that has to do with the Herondales that Jem is sort of like tracing throughout history.
But you kind of know the outcome of that already.
And we sort of do, especially if you've read Queen of Air and Darkness. But on the flip side, that it's centered on the pivotal role of the shadow market being played at every single era and time. In every single country that the shadow market might even pop up, which I think just enriches the lore even further. It's like, it kind of almost reminds me, if anybody's watched John Wick, about how that John Wick has that one hotel for all of the assassins, and it's almost like kind of like Switzerland, and it's covered. I feel like the shadow market has that much untapped potential in terms of really digging this world down. And so that, I think, is a credit to Cassandra Clare and her team of writers, who, by the way, did a magnificent job of these things. I dare I even say that I've enjoyed the Collected Chronicles a little bit more than the actual main series themselves. In the same way that I enjoyed what is it? The Eldest Curses, Book 1. Profusely. Like, I've never liked Alec Lightwood as much as I did when I read the book, and so I guess
maybe that's the least spoilery.
And I feel like it's because Cassandra Clare gets writers who are fans of her series to put so much love into it. So when their spin comes into it, such a fresh take, right? Not that we don't like necessarily what Cassandra Clare has done. We don't like how we're responding to it because we're complete garbage now, and that's all that we do is cry and talk about these characters, but that Shadow Market does a special thing, which is not just sort of take snippets of the past and make the present context even better, but ties everything so it sets up the future books coming, is insane to us. So Last Hours is coming, the Wicked Powers is coming as well, and of course there's not much on the Eldest Curses on this thing. Not so much, right? Yay?
I don't know.
Spoilers. She's very coy.
I don't know. Like, I legitimately don't know.
Well, I saw some Last Hours foreshadowings, me, and Wicked Powers foreshadowings.
Well, like Maki says, the highlights of this book for me really are the characters. Like, you get to know a lot of the main cast of the Last Hours in it, because there are like 1 or 2 or 3 stories centered on them.
Yeah.
You also get to know, to see what's happening with the characters you love so much in the Dark Artifices, because that also gets featured in this story. And then you get to encounter old faces like Lily Chen. Raphael is in it. Like, it's just
Chen.
this lovely... Katarina's in it. Like,
Katarina, Magnus, Alec.
like, so many people you
Even
love.
baby Jace Herondale is in here, which
Oh my God,
I thought was...
That story, surprisingly, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and you know, it's a marvel for anyone to make me appreciate Jace for more than like 3 seconds, which I did for a full 3 seconds. I'm like, oh, this poor child. And then he starts at 11 years old talking about how incredibly good looking he is. And I'm like, yep, we're done. And we're good. Like, you're Herondale, that's what counts.
It's
and then,
definitely something to be experienced if you are a fan of the Shadowhunters world in general, I think. Again, though, I will say, a lot of it is definitely gem-centered, so depending on where you fall on the spectrum, that might affect how you feel about the story overall.
So if you're not too big a fan of Jim, you're either going to really, really like him or really, really not like him more, because the fandom is polarized. I still say it's a well-written read. I think
so too.
I think the dominoes...
Come on, you want to meet the characters in the last hours. You have to.
You have to meet the last...
And you want to know what happened to the Blackthorns and certain Herondales after the Dark Artifices. So.
And to be fair, it is actually the characters in the last hours that have elevated us to the level of garbage. Now, like, must be flash photos of, like,
Not
names.
true. Alec Lightwood literally propelled you. Nope, propelled you, because you started liking him more after.
Exactly, and this is...
Can we just talk about how Maki says, literally, right after finishing, the first thing he says to me is, I like Alec Lightwood. And I'm just like, I have been here since day one.
Well, Alexa saw the potential. I liked him when the potential was realized. I honestly believe that Alec's journey is one of the most extraordinary I've seen in a very long time.
And it happens for so long.
And
like,
this is and Alec Lightwood is the hero this particular world needs, I think. If
BT Dubs, that terrifies me, because if he's the one they...
You know what?
I literally...
Listen, if Cassie Clare kills anyone if Cassie in this era, if Cassie kills any Lightwood and anyone that they love, and she has already twice, we riot. I swear to God, like, there's just no... It's like this is this
petition for the entire Lightwood Bane family to
get a pass. Forever. Because this is the woman who not murdered, but this is the woman who wrote about Max Lightwood, the youngest sibling of the Lightwood family, murdered
the cinnamon roll
by a darkened Shadowhunter that we didn't know was eventually going to be Jonathan Morgenstern. That's the same writer that's writing this, okay? And I forget that because I love these guys so much. And then I read the first chapter and I'm like, oh my God, everyone's fair game. Everyone's fair game.
Oh, also.
Especially because she's winding up for Wicked Powers to be like her Avengers Infinity War Endgame kind of.
But also, side note, there's a new ship that I am in full support of. Hasn't sailed yet.
Oh,
but I am looking forward to the last hours because I want it to sail so badly.
We've talked about the ship. We're not going to spoil it.
Definitely not.
If you already know what it is, like, message us privately. We can talk about it. But I was literally hyperventilating up and down the street reading this thing while doing chores, and just like texting Alexa. It's like I remember the exact lamppost that I just basically had to like breathe oxygen so I could survive because I did not see the ship coming.
I didn't either.
It hit me literally like a freight train. At the way I was reading it, I would have probably been run over by a truck and not noticed, but would have died happy just at the thought of this thing happening.
I really want it to happen, guys.
And so there is a ship out there that, like, I don't even care what Cassie writes anymore. This is my headcanon. I don't accept anything else, but it is so beautiful.
Can you imagine it?
It's a Last Star ship, just so that you know.
Yes.
Which probably means it might not have happened. We don't know.
I don't know anything.
No. Even Cassie Clare says her little timeline of, like, Shadowhunter, like, family trees is, like, perceived and not necessarily true. And I'm just like, girl, that better not be true because my ship better have a fighting chance. So, yeah.
Clearly
we have a lot of feelings for that thing.
Also, Lily Chen for president.
And Lily Chen for president. Lily Chen, I would read, I swear to God, and if Cassie Clare does this, I would buy, like, 2 copies maybe if there was a special edition. I would read 300 pages of Lily Chen hitting on anything that walks. All over the world. I would do that. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I would definitely.
I just love it. And actually, can they just do like a short story version with Lily in it? Because that would be great.
Anything with Lily Chen is absolute gold. Anything with Lily Chen and Jem Carstairs in the same room is even absolute better. Gold. Throw in Tessa in there and it is a party. I love that so much. So, polarizing, because I think as this, in the same way that Infinity War was sort of polarizing as well, as this fandom decides to take its sides, and as the pieces position themselves as we wind up to the Last Hours and to the Wicked Powers, this book is to the point where Alexa and I wanted to like do a special, and you do let us know in the comments if you want to see this. We wanted to do a special project where we were going to take hardbound editions of all 3 Chronicles, and we were going to combine everything. Like if you want everything James Herondale, this is your stack. If you want everything Alec Lightwood and you know, if you want everything Lightwood Bane, here's another thing. So I want to just do that because we feel like, because that's what I've been, by the way, I've been rereading Shadowhunter Academy and Bane Chronicles just to get the order right. So we might actually just do that. Just buy those books, put those together, design like book covers of their own, and say, this is everything James. This is everything Last Hour's Crew. This is everything Lightwood Bane. And this is
Lightwood Bane. That will be my favorite.
And those are only the 3 and of course Gem and Tessa, but that's everything in here anyway. So
not everything. There's a Lightwood Bane story in here.
Well, right, no, but I meant the only repository of anything Gem and Tessa right now is in here. So if you want everything Last Hour's Crew, then yeah, you're gonna have to pick it away from, like, you know.
I will say I was so smug at first because I was like, oh, I'm 6 stories in and I haven't cried, and then I read the 7th fucking story, and at the end of it I'm like
sobbing hysterically. So was I, by the way. But so yeah,
that story is my favorite.
That said,
it's called The Land I Lost.
Right, and that said, this is you know, I would like to end it at, if you don't like Gem, you're not gonna like this one. If you love Gem, you're gonna love him in this one. The Last Hour's Crew is a must, and Alec Lightwood is the hero that this era needs. Like, now I know why the last book ended up with Alec where he was. That makes absolute sense now, because this obviously preceded that, and it's magnificent and brilliant, and I couldn't have picked a better like hero to be in the position that Alec is in right now. So we're gonna end it there.
I have some reading to do
because she has some rereading to do. Because we've probably reread like snippets of this book like 5 times since we read the whole thing.
I will tell you guys, I know which moments I have read the most in the Shadow. Like, I have literally read it upwards of 20 times at this point. And it's the ending of Queen of Air and Darkness, and it gets me every single damn time.
It's a beautiful,
like, I'm always like, one day I'm gonna become immune to this, and it's not gonna nope. Not today is not that day.
Not happening. All right, well, so that's pretty much it. Episode 3 is done and in full swing. We will have more what we read for you guys in the next couple of weeks, and we will see you then.
Bye!
Bye.
Demons.
Okay.
That's how it ends. Demons.